we all have a potential in us, and that potential it's like our soul calling us forward to something that we can be. And if we follow that path, it grows our character. And we get drugged through the mud. We get the weight room of life proverbially, but ultimately it's us needing to like live up to that potential that really grows our character. And I knew I wasn't living up to my potential, and I needed other guys around me, to push me and to get me to that ultimate potential. And kind of looking back, it's like, like.
Well, this is Dr. Dave, and I'm so excited to have you on my podcast. This is the Doing the Work podcast, and this has been a project of mine. And really, this whole thing was started because I want to talk to people who have inspired me, who've been a part of my growth. I've had many conversations with you in which I walked away wishing that I had recorded that for posterity, or that I could share it with other people, just like things that changed me at a foundational level, and that I knew if someone else could hear that, that someone else might get something out of it too. And so that's this project, is just me trying to have some like conversations with people and just see where it goes. So here we are.
Well, thank you for having me, my friend.
Yeah,
man, this is it's been a long journey. You and I was literally thinking about this this morning. We have another good friend of ours, Dave, and we'll call him the other Dave because
I refer to you guys as the Daves,
Yeah, and I was actually kind of laughing because in thinking about where we are today in doing the work, right? And where we were when we first started getting together, when we knew we needed each other. I knew I needed you guys, and I knew I needed like strong men in my life that would keep me accountable and help me through some processes that I was working through. And thinking about that guy, was that like 3 years ago?
I don't know. I was thinking about the same thing. I don't remember the timeline that well, but I was also thinking about the miracle of how it all kind of came together, about how I originally met you, and then so how you somehow knew Dave, who I also knew, and like,
I honestly was following Dave on Instagram and I saw him. I was like, this guy, I like his philosophy. I like what he's doing. I like, he's reading books that I would read. He's doing things that I would do. And I'm like, I want to reach out to this guy because I think he's got something of value that I can lean into. And I knew that. I knew I needed men in my life, good quality men. I mean, we could sit there and chat about that for a minute, because I think men need other men today more than ever. And I knew I needed you guys at the time. And I was going through my dark night about 2 years before that. Coming out of that, I was like kind of putting myself together, but I still needed that accountability group. And I knew I didn't have that yet. And so I reached out to you guys, and we just started meeting for coffee. And I remember that it was kind of funny because we were still very shy. We were like pretending.
Right. Well, that's the whole how groups come together. The forming, storming, norming. We were through all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I do remember everything shifted for the positive when instead of meeting for coffee, we actually met for whiskey, and that was the day where we were like, all right, it's all coming out, all of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. When we finally got through some of those inhibitions. That were holding us back.
We finally were able to get vulnerable, and I think that was the key, both for me, but also I think in our relationship was just to go through that vulnerability, and the rest is history, and here we are.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of how I remember it too. And I remember just being fascinated with like one of my friends and members of my gym was a guy named Nick, who you knew, and then he said that you got to meet my doctor. You're gonna love him. You guys think about things similarly, and then so we met one time, and then it kind of dropped off, and then again, the miracle of what the universe provides.
Yeah.
You and Dave had linked. So this is the story how you and Dave linked up, and then you guys said, "Hey, let's all get together."
Let's do it.
And what did we call that group? The
Warrior Poets.
The Warrior Poets.
The Warrior Poets. Yeah, the Warrior Poet Society. And actually, I looked up online. I was like, man, that's like a great name. I want to buy the domain name. And there was a guy that was already doing it. And I was like, there's like a name for everything. But I actually like that guy's stuff, which, he's got good stuff.
There you go. So that led you to that. And
yeah, man.
So, well, I am so grateful that we did meet because, like you said, since then, like in witnessing the journey, all three of our journeys, and the trajectory of how, we're all very different and dealing with different things than we were then. And I'm just so grateful to have been a part of that. And so, and I agree with you that not enough people have the courage to know that they need, well, one, have the wisdom to know that they need a group, what do we call that? A pack, right?
Yeah, a tribe,
a tribe, and then, but also then to have the courage to go find it and create it if it doesn't already exist.
Yeah, it was such an interesting thing. Kind of looking back, I had this, I don't know, like I'm highly ambitious. I just really am, and I always wanted to live my best life and to just live my potential. I really feel like we all have a potential in us, and that potential it's like our soul calling us forward to something that we can be. And if we follow that path, it grows our character. And we get drugged through the mud. We get the weight room of life proverbially, but ultimately it's us needing to like live up to that potential that really grows our character. And I knew I wasn't living up to my potential, and I needed other guys around me, to push me and to get me to that ultimate potential. And kind of looking back, it's like, like I needed that.
And honestly, it was something that I was one of the people who didn't even have the wisdom to know that I needed it. You guys you guys manifested there for me, and out of something that you guys knew that you needed. And I was like, oh yeah, this sounds great. But I didn't, and then like now I'm like, wow, like look at the gifts that gave me, and I didn't even know I needed it.
So, I love that, man. So looking back, man, it's been an incredible journey in the last 3 years, and to say that I've said this earlier, but to say that I've changed is it's like an understatement. I'm a completely different human today now than I was.
And it's visible.
Yeah.
So like to jump into that a little bit, like what are you working on? Like what are you working on now? Like what are some of the things that you're working on currently?
Yeah, like personally or professionally?
Whatever. Yeah. What's top of mind? What are you focusing on?
Yeah. So it's personal is professional in a way for me. I feel that we all have a purpose in this life. I really feel like we were all put on this earth for a reason, and that's not necessarily to say that is like a work. Like, you don't have to go out and like lay bricks or be a marketing manager or do something, but that we all have an essence essentially. And that essence is, I'm gonna use the word vibration, and that vibration like carries information. So each person has their own like tone. And when I bring this up with other people, I always give the example of like, when you've ever been in a public place, like a bar or something like that, you just know that like someone's vibe is off. You just like can sense that. You can feel that. You can feel that. And there is evidence in science coming out relative to these things now. Like we know that people literally emit vibrations, and those vibrations are based on our cognition and our constant trains of thought, both conscious and subconscious, and how we emit ourselves in the world.
And your physical
being. Yeah. So it's mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And so I really feel that we all have a purpose, and that purpose, again, it comes down to an essence, which is a vibration. And if we can live up to that potential, then we become the vibration that we were meant to be, which ultimately requires that we go through the hero's journey, the dark night. We battle the inner demons. We do the things that are necessary for us to live up to that fullest potential. And so both personally, that's what I've been on myself, is going through the inner work just constantly, just like it's like a daily practice for me. I meditate, I do yogic practices, I move my body, I'm focused on my nutrition, Except for on Fridays, I have pizza night, which is important, with pizza with the kids, you got to do that. And yeah, like I'm really focused on living up to my fullest potential. And I've gone through many different types of ceremonies, journeys, if you want to call them. I've worked with different plant medicines. I saw the evidence come out for that through Johns Hopkins, helping veterans. And similar to you, I'm a veteran. And so I needed something to help me both through the wounds of war, but also just some financial trauma that I went through earlier in my career after having signed a contract that fell through. And I was really banking on that contract because it was a location contract. And I basically lost everything overnight. Everything kind of spiraled. And all of a sudden I kind of was like kind of standing there like, oh shit, like this is, I knew it was like, this is my moment. Like, this is my moment to show myself what I'm capable of. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. But what I realize now is that brought me into my fullest potential, that power. When I say my power, it's like, I'm able to see things. And when I say see things, I mean like, if something like, if I have a negative thought, for instance, I can catch it right away. I can see that like, nope, that's the wrong train of thought. Like, I don't need to think negative. I can just transmute that very quickly. I can remain positive. I can remain optimistic. And it's not like some panacea, like la-di-da, everything's going to be okay. Like, this is true boots on ground, like focused on where I'm going and being able to actively both know what I'm thinking, change what I like. If I think something in negative, I'm able to flip that into the positive and then get better results in my life because of it. And so that's actually basically what I'm doing now professionally as well, is helping people through that process of the inner game, the inner work, and transmute both what is in the conscious mind. So just like the daily mindset work, the meditation, the transmuting thoughts, focusing on where you want to go, but also the deep, if you want to call it spiritual work, using a process called somatic release breathwork.
Yeah, I want to hear about that because I know that's been a lot of the work that you've been doing. So hopefully we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, and so that is like the deep, like let's get down into the roots. And so by going through all of these processes, I can help people truly through the hero's journey in a way. It's such a powerful process. And right now in the works of developing an actual like weekend experience and immersion, so that the individual can come in if they're feeling like, man, I'm not getting the results I want. I'm just you can just like almost like you can like see it, like but you just, for whatever reason, you're just blocking yourself, like self-sabotage, procrastination. You're just not as effective as you want to be. All of that is truly what's going on the inside of your body, how your body and your mind are responding emotionally to the world around you. So you might notice that, people might notice that they'll get a certain result and then they'll be winning in life. They'll be getting the result they want. And all of a sudden, like something will happen and then they'll retreat back. Well, that's a trauma response essentially. And so my job is to help you break through that instead of running away, go through that. And it does require people. It requires a guide. It requires having a group of individuals around you to support you and hold you while you go through that, because that shit's scary. That's the scary part of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier the weight room of life.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that visual. I love that idea. And honestly, it's something that I have not done a great job of. The reason why I own a gym and gyms and fitness facilities and stuff like that is because I see and feel the direct relationship between how you develop strength, physical strength in the weight room, the actual weight room, is the exact same way that you develop strength emotionally, spiritually. And I want to do a better job of saying, like, look, when we're in the weight room, yes, we are trying to become physically stronger, but this is also exactly exactly how you figure out that relationship problem that you've been having, or that career issue, or whatnot. And so when you talked about earlier, this is the you said something along the lines of, this is like a heavy weight that I'm lifting. I'm going through this dark part of my life, and this is like the heavy weight.
Yeah.
I loved hearing you say that, because I was like, yeah, this is like your testing day. You know, you've done all this training, and this. It has my program worked for me.
Yeah.
This is my 1 rep max, essentially, or this is my 1 mile run, or whatnot.
Yeah.
And not enough people look at those tests in life with that kind of vision and that gratitude, like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me all this shit that I'm having to deal with right now, because let's see if I can lift it. And if I can't lift it, then I'll drop it, and then I'll go back to the weight room. And I'll start training. And now I know what I'm capable of or not capable of.
Yeah. And the training, quote unquote training, can always change too. Keep that in mind, you know, like as we age, the emotional training, you know, I think about the way I started. I just started with you know, gratitude and just, you know, affirmations and these things. And I got into meditation, and then ultimately it's worked itself into full on somatic expression, somatic releasing for myself. If I'm going through some work, you know, I have like the day-to-day practices, and this is just the emotional stuff. But I'm able to, again, like really work through some deep stuff in a very quick period of time. And so as you grow, as you develop through the weight room of life, you're able to process things. It's like you're physically, like, it's like you're emotionally stronger as you are physically stronger. And it's such a powerful thing. I really do like that analogy too, because if you're looking to grow your muscles, right, physically, you don't like look at the weights and be like, you son of a bitch, you know, like it's like if you're, you know, you're looking at your husband, you know, or your wife, and you're like, God damn it, you know, like doing that thing again, you know, like that's just an example. That's like a 45-pound weight. That's all that is.
That's it.
You know, and how you perceive the weight is really a lot of what's gonna, you know, the result you're gonna get if you go into, you know, let's say like max deadlift day, like a 1 rep max deadlift day, and you're like, yes, like you know, your mindset's tuned in, and you align your mind and body, and like you are physically stronger because of your mind. And we know our mind and body are connected, and so our mind, the way we show up in the weight room, but also just it really shows up in so many different areas of life, in, you know, our finances, in our relationships, in our, you know, you name it, you know, it's everywhere. And so it's you know, if you're able to really show up and like look at, let's say, your state of finances, because let's say finances is a thing that was a thing for me. And if you're able to look at your bank account, or your just like your customer list or whatever, you know, and you're like, you know, you're not happy with it, but you see it as an opportunity, you know, then everything is going to change. And you see it with gratitude, your whole life will change, because then it's as if the universe like has to match you, how you're showing up, and you being a sovereign individual, you have free will to choose. And that's really ultimately what, if I'm going to sell it, if I'm selling anything, I'm just selling free will. I'm just giving you free will back. That's all it is.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when we're in a trauma response, so I'll give you an example. So there's a difference between response and react, right? So if you have a situation, let's use a bank account, because that, you know, that resonates with a lot of people. Is if you look at your bank account and you're not happy with that, and you experience the feelings of, let's say, poverty or lack of freedom, or you're just not, you know, you're just not happy with what you're looking at as far as numbers are concerned. You feel fear. Well, out of reaction, out of fear, you're going to react. And then out of reaction, you're going to get a certain result. And that result typically is not going to be at what you actually want, which is more money, more freedom, more joy, more ease, more pleasure, all these things. Now, that fear comes from a response that's essentially embedded in our subconscious mind, which is our body. So our mind and body are truly connected. Obviously, they have to be, right? Otherwise, you know, like we just sort of be these, I don't know. I don't even know if we would be alive, you know, like it would be weird.
We would not have evolved.
Yeah, we would not have evolved, right? So our mind and body are truly connected. And it's in our body that lives the subconscious, the past experiences. And so so you mentioned, like you call me Dr. Dave, which is, I always forget that I go by that moniker sometimes, but so my background is in chiropractic. So I was a body worker, and I would see the people coming in with the same issues over and over and over again. I was like, there's got to be something with how mind and body connect, because I'd be chatting with them, and on the days that they'd have low back pain, they'd also feel a lack of support. Or on the days that they'd have knee pain, they'd feel that they couldn't move forward in life. Or, and like these like patterns. And I started studying this stuff, and sure enough, like there are patterns that show up in the body. And so what I needed to do was figure out, well, how can I go into the body and use mind, what I know about mind, and connect to the body and release that through the realm of emotion, because mind and body are connected through emotion. That's how we have an experience. So we don't experience anything without an emotion. An emotion is literally just a vibration. That's the information that we're giving off. And so if we can dive into that and release that, now we can go from reaction, which is a trauma response in the subconscious mind. Let's say you had an experience when you were a kid, you saw, something that was very traumatic. I know you and I have chatted about that in an experience for you. And for me, one experience that I had that was traumatic was just seeing my dad, like basically, he came home one day and all of a sudden everything was different. And I didn't know why. I was very young. But I just knew everything was different. And then all of a sudden my mom and dad were fighting more, and come to find out he had gotten fired from his job, and then he had to start his own business. And that was very stressful financially. And the things that I would ask for that would, come easy no longer came easy. And it was very traumatic for me. So I experienced financial stress and trauma even when I was a kid. And you don't think about that stuff, but then it's that lives inside of you. So essentially, as an adult, I relived that and it was almost like because of that vibration, right? The universe gives us what we are, how we are thinking mentally, physically, and emotionally, how we are vibrating. I literally had to relive that, and then I went through all the reactions of that, all the triggers, all the stress, all the explosions, put myself together, released all that, and now I have free will, meaning I no longer react to when I look at my bank account and say, oh, it's at this dollar amount. I don't like that. Like I'm not reacting anymore. I'm responding, being like, oh, okay, like I see this dollar amount. Okay, great. What can I do about it? Well, I could do this, this, and this. And the emotion, the expression of that is completely different. And so I don't have to come from fear anymore. I can come from gratitude. I can come from joy. I can come from a place of service. And that's what my life has become. And it's like the most incredible things have come to me because of that. And, then the question is, do I want more? Of course. Like, it's like a healthy dissatisfaction, Ed Milet said it the perfect way, and I'm like blanking on it, but he'd be basically referred to it as like he was dissatisfied, but content. I think it was like contently dissatisfied in a way. Like that was kind of the way he described it, and I was like, man, that's like perfect, because it's like you can be grateful and content, and yet still like want more, and that's just the nature of being a human, right?
Right.
Like, we have to eat food. We have to live life.
Well, that's how I equate it to is like kind of like nutrition. Like, if you want to have a healthy body weight and stuff like that, you have to learn to be content with being a little hungry sometimes.
Yes.
You have to accept that as like not being a crisis.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, this is part of the process to get to my end goal.
Yes.
And so finances are similar. It's like, okay, if you want to, get somewhere in life, you kind of have to learn to be content with, some setbacks or some, having without.
Yes.
But then knowing that that's just part of what's going to get you to the end goal.
And ultimately, like perfect example, like, and I'm glad you touched on that, because when you're going through the process and you don't have the outcome, right? Like the tangible physical outcome. Let's just use money, because that's easy for people to like grasp onto. When you don't have it, you still have to remain focused on the emotion of gratitude, on joy, on ease, on pleasure, on freedom, of whatever it is. And it's in that work that you will naturally get triggered. And I know it sounds weird, but what's happening is that you are consciously choosing, I'm going to put a different vibration into my body. And when that light vibration, when that higher vibration goes in there, what happens is all the shadow and ego and all that stuff comes forward. And it's as if you get triggered throughout the process as a means to level up, because it's like as soon as you turn a light on, the darkness of a room is going to go away. Well, that when you do that in our body, because our body, it takes a little while to kind of catch up, we have to still process the emotions of that. So that's where the work is. That's where you're going to do, like, let's say daily practices. That's where, a weekend immersion is going to really come into play. That's where coaching is going to come into play. That's where having a group of individuals that can support you along the path. That's, when we were working through our stuff, you, me, and Dave, and it gave me the opportunity to express vulnerability. And in doing that, I realized, oh, that's strength. I can look at this shadow part of me, this part that I'm really ashamed of. And there was a part of me that I was really ashamed of, which at the time was finances. It was like, I'm very ashamed of this. I'm very ashamed that I'm not providing a life for my wife and my kids that I had the thought of, right? So again, that was my potential just calling me forward. And it was just a high ambition. And I, in experiencing that shame and announcing that shame, it no longer had power over me. So
Right.
that power, that positive emotion of freedom, of joy, was able to now take hold in my body.
Yeah, it reminds me of a book I listened to recently by Anthony DeMello, and it was called I'm forgetting the name of it. But anyway, he talked about it boils down to two things in life.
Yeah.
It's love, and then everything. It's like you can choose love, and he said that the opposite is not hate. We think that like the opposite of love is hate, but actually the opposite of love is fear.
Yes.
And that's what it really boils down to, is when we're acting in ways that we're not proud of, or we don't feel like is like our true self, or our, you talked about essence earlier. It's like, I'm not being who I really am.
Yeah.
It's really, we're acting out of fear.
Correct.
And if we can, in that moment between, reaction and response, if we can take a pause there and just check in with ourselves and be like, the next step I'm going to take, is that going to be because I'm afraid? I mean,
Yes.
I'm fearful,
Yes.
or am I going to choose love? Am I going to say, I love this. I know
Yes.
this is like something that's good for me. And this is, I can turn this into something loving. He just said it in a really powerful way. And that's resonated with me since then. It sounds a lot like what you're saying.
That's exact. Yeah. That you hit the nail on the head. So when you are in reaction, which is fear, and which is the opposite of love, which is the opposite of love and free will, are essentially the same,
And
right?
It's kind of like the whole fight or flight thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that fight, flight, flee, and fawn is the other one, where it's like you kind of cower down and you're like people pleasing and these things. The difference between that and free will is really a dysregulated nervous system. It's your mind and body are not aligned to a potential. And that potential is maybe a dream that you have, like a house and a career and these things. And that's why dreaming is so powerful. We have to be able to set. So if anybody was, like, okay, where do I start, with this work? It would be literally literally write a dream. Like, what dream do you have for your life? Do you have a certain career goal? Do you have, like a physical goal? Whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, because that is our potential calling us forward. And when we set that dream, now we have a pinpoint on the map, and we can go towards that. And when we are moving towards that, that's where we're going to experience the weights. The 45-pound weights, quote unquote, where you're going to have a conversation with someone and it's going to be very triggering. Maybe you start a business and one of your customers sues you, because you were negligent, or but you didn't mean to, but you still were, or something, whatever the situation is, that can be extremely triggering. And that is the process for you to evolve. And that's why, if you are going to live your greatest life, having a group of people around you that are also going towards their greatest life is so important. It's you have to have other people, and even the wisdom of coaches. And you mentioned that you hired a coach. I've hired coaches, whether it's coaches for business or coaches for relationships or coaches for whatever. Having wise individuals who have done the work, to help you through that process, and that's ultimately what professionally what we're providing now. Yeah.
I love that you brought up the coaching thing, because obviously I consider myself a coach for people, and I coach coaches to coach other people at the gym, in the physical realm.
Coaching.
I love that you bring that up, because I think as a coach, like, you've coached other people to things. We've all done that. And I think where the key there is as a coach, you don't necessarily have to have had the experience or the wisdom or anything like that. I think about this for myself, but it's just someone who walks the path with someone and draws out from them their inner wisdom. Yeah. Like, it's like, I don't need to know exactly what you're going through or have gone through what you're going through, or to have some, I already know the solution. I'm just like, it's just someone who's like, well, let me pull that out of you. Like, what, and asking probably more questions than you are giving information. Yes. I think that's really powerful. And that's what about having that tribe and that group of people who are, maybe we all have different dreams. We all have, you have a different dream than I do. And then, the other Dave that, he has a different dream than either one of us. Yeah. But because we are walking the path of pursuing our dream, pursuing our optimal self, we understand what that process is like, and we can draw the best out of each other during it. Yeah. And I'll learn some things chasing my dream that'll help you. Yeah. And you'll learn some things chasing you, and together we all get there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't get there until we all get there. Yeah. That was my favorite, one of my favorite things is like, none of us make it until all of us make it. Yeah. I love that. I love that vision of that. When I sit here and when I say it in my head, it might only make sense to me, but I envision this world in which we all collectively come together. We stop trying to make ourselves right and others wrong, or me good and you bad. Yeah. And we come together in a way that says like, okay, I want to help you make it. Yeah. Because when you make it, I make it. Yes. And I just love thinking about being in a world that's like it, like that. I completely agree. I really imagine a world where we are all living to that fullest potential, and we are supporting each other. And it's social norms to honor and hold space for someone who's going through a struggle, whatever that struggle is. If they're wrestling with their business or their finances or their relationship or whatever, that we as individuals don't judge another, but that we simply hold space. And that's, again, that can only come when you've done the work, internally. And that's why I do what I do, because it's as if I'm helping individuals live to their fullest potential, not just for themselves, but for the entirety of the world. Because as soon as they are in a space where they can hold space, they can live in their power, they don't have to worry anymore. They can help others go to that same level. And I think that's how we all rise. And that's, and you kind of asked the question, it's kind of funny. I always forget, what I'm doing professionally, even though I'm doing it. Yeah. It's funny. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing, Right. Well, it's like, you're out here doing what calls you. You're out here basically finding ways to make a living doing the things that you would do for free anyway. Correct. Just because that's what calls you. Yes. And that actually is one of the things that I love about you. It's interesting that the last podcast I did was with a guy named Dr. Zain Hakim, who's also, he's a practitioner, like a medical doctor, right? Who has like a practice, I guess family care practice or whatever, but he has similar philosophies as us. And what I love about you is that the way that you've come to all of this, and the way that you've learned all of this is as a chiropractor. You kind of like, that's where it all started. You kind of were like, well, I'm going to follow a career that like, you know, I can make a decent living doing and I, you know, it comes with some status and stuff like that. But then you reverse engineered the whole thing and you now do this much more broadly expansive, holistic work that you found by practicing chiropractic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I came to the realization that if you want to, like, I'm in the health industry. I'm going to use that in quotations because it's kind of important. And I asked the question, well, what is health? And I was, you know, in the beginning, I was like, okay, it's like physical, you know, you got to do like, you know, I came down to like, okay, like doing things, right? But I'm like, that's not health. Like nutrition and working out, that's not like, that's just like what you do to achieve health. But what is health? And what I came to realize is that you can't separate any aspect of an individual's life if you want to talk about health, because we know that the mind and body are connected, and we know that if we are going to live the healthiest life, we know that our hormones have to be balanced. We know that our not just in our nutrition, but just like that our entire state of being, our well-being has to be balanced, and we need to remain adaptable and essentially in charge, free. And the only way we can get there is if we take the entire individual. If you have a thought about poverty when you look at your finances, and that thought sends a signal down into your body that starts to express bio and neurochemical, which creates this pressure, which creates this tension, this stress. Cortisol is released. We have epinephrine, norepinephrine being released into our body. We know that creates inflammation, that creates breakdown in the system, that then creates dis-ease. And I use the word dis-ease. I kind of break that up because it's lack of ease. We don't feel ease. And then I realized, wait, you can't separate any one aspect of an individual, even their spiritual well-being, if they don't feel connected to a higher form, a higher source, a purpose in this life. If they feel like they don't have impact, if they don't feel connected in their relationships. Now, all of a sudden, okay, if I'm going to be a healthcare provider, I got to be a relationship coach and a financial coach and a business coach. I was like, oh shit, like this is powerful. This is interesting. And so really as a healthcare provider now, what I provide is the structured work, essentially the techniques, the exercises, the opportunities, the experiences for people to process their external world and the internal and then show up to those things. So I'm not necessarily like teaching them how to, look at their books and or how to relate in their, the relationships, even though they're like, I'll throw things in there every once in a while for those things. But really it's how are you showing up in those experiences? And as you change your mindset, your mind and body to those experiences, how is your experience now changing to you? And that really is true health, because you've just completely transmuted something that was maybe deep inside a trauma that you experienced as a child. And you no longer express that out of reaction, out of fear. You now are able to respond to when your wife asks you a certain question that used to trigger you. And, like my wife would trigger me in a certain way when, of course, cause I was not providing I was to a level that I deemed fit. And so, when she would ask certain questions about like, hey, why aren't we doing this? Or why aren't we going on more vacations? I would get so triggered because I wasn't living up to that potential.
Right. It boils down to that fear response.
Exactly.
I'm afraid that I'm not worthy, or, that I'm not providing. I'm afraid, so I get it.
Yeah. And that was exactly it. And so my reaction then would be out of fear, but fear of like, I'm not worthy. I'm, not lovable.
You're going to throw me away.
Yeah. Like you're going to get rid of me. Sometimes I would think, I'm like, why is she still with me? I knew I was a really good man. But I just wasn't living to a potential that I set for myself, even though that she might have had, she wanted nicer things, of course, go on vacations. and these things, but I wasn't living to that potential. But what I recognize now, and kind of coming full circle in this conversation, is that I had to reconcile and transmute and process all of that information, essentially, that trauma that I had as a child, just everything as I was in the moment, so that I could release that, then ultimately show up to those conversations and be like, okay, yeah, like, well, how are we going to do that now? Like, which is a completely different vibration.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and another part, you mentioned vulnerability, which is something I've thought a lot about recently, and it's actually been coming up through a lot of my recent conversations. And part of that too is also just owning the piece of that is, when you say this to me, I have this fear response. I have this, again, like I have this feeling like because I have set an expectation for myself, and then when I'm not meeting that expectation, I'm afraid that you are going to this is actually me talking about me. You're going to get rid of me, right? And but then having the wisdom and the vulnerability to say that, and in those conversations, that brings light and awareness to the other, and then also it puts it out into the world, and then people can kind of start understanding, how to approach you differently. You start creating different kinds of conversations, through that process.
Yeah, because you're a completely different human.
Right.
And I've gotten a lot of compliments in relative to just like, we'll call it my vibration, just like my state. Mm-hmm. And I was at a retreat. This is after a big transformation. I'd done some work with plant medicines, and specifically ayahuasca was a plant medicine that I've worked with. And it was such an incredible experience that would be a whole nother podcast, like a completely
podcast. I mean, so there's just so many things we could talk about, and things that we have talked about, is why I had you on the show, because I knew that it would go somewhere,
And so after that, though, I just came back from that experience completely transformed in a very positive way. And I had done a lot of work up to that point. And the work I did, I recognized because of the, that plant medicine, it shows you very clearly your life, and whatever you go in with, it'll show you what you need. And I came out of that just like whole, the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
I came out just easy, just free. And I was at a retreat about 4 or 5 weeks. Actually, I think it was like 6 weeks later. I remember like people would come up to me and be like, because it wasn't a plant medicine retreat. It was just like it was called Comfort Zone Retreats. It was a lot of fun. And we had a big circle, and there was about 40 people there. And people would notice, like, they're like, I could just tell that this guy's vibe is like tuned in. Mm-hmm. And people made comments of that over the course of the week or weekend. And it's true. It's like, as soon as you do the work, as soon as you go, you really like wrestle your inner demons.
Yeah.
You come out the other side, and things come to you. And that's the part that I really love that idea. So Paul Chek calls it working in. Sometimes we work out. I work out, but he calls it like work in. And it's like, when you do that work, and when you were talking about like a somatic response to things, I've been hearing that term from like, I remember from like years ago. I mean, like probably even in my childhood, and it usually was talked about in terms of like, this person has migraines, or this person has stomach problems, or whatever, and it's a somatic I got the fact that it was like, okay, they have some emotional issues, or they're having some things going on in their life that are manifesting in a physical way. Yes.
But now I understand that in a much different, like when you're talking about your frequency, your vibration, that, and what it takes to heal those parts of yourself. And a lot of, it's like, so the habits and the practices that, so that just actually might be a great segue into this somatic breath work that you so I get the somatic part.
Yeah.
How does the breath work play into that?
So, well, let's kind of talk about what somatic is. Somatic is the Latin root for body. So anytime you've heard of the term psychosomatic, which a lot, like, for whatever reason.
That was the term I was trying to think of.
Yeah, psychosomatic, where people, we would sort of like almost like the placebo effect. We would sort of like take that like evidence and just sort of throw it away and be like, oh, it's just psychosomatic. But now we realize, well, that's like the stuff we need to look at. Like
it's actually the real thing.
Like the real thing, because how we are experiencing the world is how we are reacting to the world. So we have to take that evidence, and really the entirety of our entire experience is psychosomatic. If you think about it, the way we react, we mentioned this earlier, the way we react to our finances or our relationships is going to affect our biochemical and neurochemical expression in our body, which is going to give us an emotion, which is, like you kind of follow the path. And then all of a sudden we get a certain result. Like, let's say we're afraid. Well, we're going to react out of fear differently than if we were in joy, and we would respond. We always we know that this is true, but it's just like, for whatever reason, it's in the moment. It's a little bit hard for us to, to kind of like grasp that.
Yeah. Would you go as far as to say that the majority or a lot of the physical ailments that we deal with are sourced in the psycho part of that, the either the psychological or emotional side of things?
Yeah. So
like if I'm having knee pain, for example, if I'm having knee pain right now, would you go as far to say that there's a large part of that is primarily can be not only sourced in, but also healed through inner work?
So anytime, all right, so the best way to describe it, the difference between an acute injury and a chronic injury, right at about the 3-week mark, right? So tissues, proteins are going to be healed relatively at about the 3-week mark. And then we go through what's called the remodeling phase. And it's in that initial phase that, okay, if tissues are, of course, inflamed and torn and ripped apart, that's going to be a very physical experience, right? So if you have let's say you just sprained a knee, right? Or an ankle, whatever. But then after that, if you still experience pain, and it's almost like, 3 years later, you're like, yeah, I got this old knee injury, that just keeps, popping up. Well, now we got to start going back into the emotional experience of that. Was that a traumatic experience? Were you pissed off at your, significant other, and you were leaving and you twisted your knee? Were you even just playing sports? And, even in that moment, it can be traumatic because there's a lot of pain, and that pain can send a signal to our brain. And if we don't feel safe in the moment, then, we can have a, very subconscious reaction, which is that's where the somatics comes in. And so we have 3 levels of our brain. We have the neocortex, we have the limbic system. Sorry, the neocortex is like the high level new part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that we're able to understand and have cognition and think, and we're able to talk, and people are able to watch and listen because of their neocortex. We have the limbic system, which is just below that. So if I kind of look at the camera, and it kind of takes my thumb and goes on the inside and then kind of wraps it around, the outer part is the neocortex. The inner part is the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, which is, the part of our brain where we do experience things like fear, but also pleasure and joy and these things. So both high level and low level vibrations. And then underneath that is the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is really just, it's the brain stem, and it's all the parts of our body that are just pretty automatic. Now, our brain stem and our reptilian brain is really where a lot of the work gets done. We don't think about our heart beating. We don't really even think about breathing. Everyone, then we'll talk about breath because it's a powerful system. We don't think about our blood pressure. We don't think about our heart rate. It just does. It just does it for us. If we eat food, it just digests for us. That's all conscious. That's all subconscious. Now, why this is important is that subconscious really runs the show. And if we have, if we've experienced a trauma from the past, our body links up, sends a signal back to our brain, says, nope, don't feel safe. And our brain will be like, correct, don't feel safe. I'm going to retreat. I'm going to fight. I'm going to flight. I'm going to freeze. I'm going to fawn, and whatever the situation might be. Again, could be finances, could be relationships, could be, you name it. So we consciously can observe that and we'd be like, oh man, I'm super annoyed by this. I'm like really frustrated. And we can kind of get pissed off about our own actions. And that's oftentimes when people get disgusted enough with the lack of results that they're getting in their life that they take action to get, to reach out to a coach or a collective or whatever, they come, that's when they come see me. And when we are not getting the result, what is happening is that we are not honoring the experience we had as a child, as an individual. We're not experiencing the body's response. And so the intelligence of the body will say, yeah, well, we need to fight, we need to flee, we need to run. So what somatic release breathwork does is it literally turns off the overthinking mind. It gets you out of your own way in a moment, right? And when I say in a moment, I mean like over the course of about an hour. It gets you out of your own way because oftentimes we overthink things. A lot of people do. In fact, everybody does.
Everybody. Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. I would say all people, all humans. Unless you're like a robot or an android or something like that.
Guru.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. We overthink things. And so what happens is we aren't honoring the emotion of it. And so what is going to happen is we're just going to keep getting the same result over and over again. So by going into this essentially a trance through breath, I can, as a facilitator, I can get you out of your own way, and I can call forward the exact thing that you need to work on. Now, what's cool about it is I don't even need to know your trauma, and you don't even need to know your trauma. You might, but what you'll notice is that what intention you go in with is simply going to come forward, and it's going to bring forward everything you need in order to work through, to process, to release the emotion of an experience so that you can now have, instead of a reaction, you can have a response. So it's taking people from fear and moving them into love. It's taking them from reaction to response to free will. So you no longer react. You have free will for a moment now in a conversation with your wife, when you look at your business, when you look at whatever area of life that is important to you. And so by going through and honoring and releasing the emotion of it, we can now, again, go into a new state, a new being.
Well, I'm super pumped to hear about this, and I'm grateful that you keep inviting me to them and I haven't made one yet, but yes. I need to get to one of these for lots of reasons. One, just in general, as a human being, I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to explore the inner workings of myself, to learn how to master myself.
Yes.
And just to be more love, and get away from the fear, which a lot of people probably look at guys like you and me and guys we pal around with and think like, oh, they're not afraid of shit. They're strong men. But in actuality, I'm constantly afraid. When I really sit and think about it, I'm constantly full of fear. And part of the reason why I've made myself to appear strong or actually be physically strong or whatever is sourced in fear.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, and of course I have a lot of experience, right? You've been in multiple combat scenarios. You are clearly going to be afraid. You've seen what can happen to you, and you're going to be afraid of that. So you build yourself up to it, or through traumatic experiences. Like, you mentioned earlier, for me, the moment of watching my mom hand my little sister to a nurse who went giving her up for adoption, that moment of witnessing that produced a life, and to this day, a lifelong fear of me, the possibility of me being able to be given away or given up on. And not that was how my 8-year-old mind was processing. That's not what my mom was doing. She wasn't giving up on my sister, but that's how I, perceived it. And
we need to honor that really quick. There's two things you mentioned there that I want to honor. One is that trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you in the moment. And so as an 8-year-old, when you don't have a rational, cortex developed at that point, your mind and body says, I'm not safe. I could be given away at any second right now. And the one that I'm linked to, my mom, the one that I know, like, if I don't have my mom, I'm fucked, right? Like that's basically like
Literally.
what your mind and body are saying. You're like, I'm dead if I get given away. And so now inside of your body, you're mentioning you experience fear, right? Well, that's happening for all of us. We're all experiencing, unless again you're a guru and in an ashram and you're just like totally fearless. We are all experiencing this constant tension. And if you almost like take a second, like if you're listening to this, really just like take a second and just tune in to the tension you feel in your body. And if you just notice that, like, oh shit, there is like, I'll be watching TV sometimes or like football. I for whatever reason, I would like get tense when I would watch the Sunday night football games. And it would always be Sunday night. I'm like, why am I feeling tense right now? It's like, well, yeah, because like when I was a kid, I would remember watching Sunday night football and being like, I don't want to go to school. And I would like create this story and like, fuck, I gotta go back to like work or school or whatever. And so I would create this tension like from that experience. And so when we are living with tension always, that is our body just emitting cortisol. That is our body emitting these chemicals, these neuro and biochemicals that are breaking us down. And so instead of our body being in a state of ease and rejuvenation and replenishment and recovery, we're kind of constantly under stress. We're kind of constantly breaking ourselves down. And so even all the workouts and all the organic food isn't going to help. And, of course it can, but you're going to constantly,
it doesn't hurt.
It's not going to hurt, but it's, you're going to be kind of chasing your own tail. Right. So as soon as you get rid of what is causing the tension, and it's really a perspective shift, it's seeing a full 360 degree understanding of, let's say when you were a child and you see your mom give your sister away, but I want to even use those terms, just, giving them up for adoption. And you experience that from a completely different perspective now as an adult, but not even as in a rational way. You go through the limbic system and deep into the visceral experience of that, and you release whatever you weren't able to release at the time. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's you need to like physically shake, or you need to scream, or you need to cry. Now your body can say, oh, finally, I let go of that stress.
Yeah.
And your body and mind can now come full circle. And it's like you no longer have the reaction. You now have the wisdom of that.
Right.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you said it that way, because it now reminded me of the book I mentioned earlier, Anthony DeMello's, called Awareness. And the whole thing is about what's key to what you're saying.
Yes.
Is to taking the time to process whatever you're feeling, and to be aware of it. And once you are aware of it and you're not just in reaction to it, then you can own it.
Yeah.
But you cannot own it, and you can't be in response to it really until you are cognizant of it. You're aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part. And so doing the breath work, doing your meditation, going through the process of reading, learning, growing, having conversations like these brings awareness.
Absolutely.
Which then gives you ownership, and then eventually you can get to mastery of it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So you are absolutely correct. The first step is awareness. You have to have awareness around the pain, no matter what. And when I say the pain, I mean the emotional pain, the physical pain, the even the spiritual pain. And if you don't, you can't take the next step, which is, what do I need to do? In most cases, by the way, the next step is to just give the wound its space. You clean it, you get out of your own way, and let nature take its course.
Right. When you know you have a wound, you can you can put a little covering over it. You can make sure there's no dirt getting into it.
Yeah.
You kind of know it's there.
Yes.
You're not banging it up against things.
Correct.
Then you can just get out of the way of it and let the body do its thing.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So when it comes to emotional wounds and really come down to, again, that psychosomatic experience, that's where, going down into the like going down and through. That's why in stories you see the hero going through the cave, and then they find the dragon, or they find like the mirror. Actually, that I always love that. The reflection pond is such a classic archetype in the hero's journey. They find a body of water where they see themselves, and they realize, oh shit, like it's me. I'm the issue here. It's not my wife. It's not my kids. It's not my business. I'm the one. And when you see that, that's when you're like almost disgusted by yourself.
Yeah.
That's you seeing your shadow. And so,
but also empowering.
It's very empowering.
When you realize I am the issue.
Yes.
And when I take care of my shit,
yes,
I can then change this whole thing.
Yes.
You don't become a victim anymore.
Yes.
You're now, it's like, oh,
yes,
I can do something about this because it's me.
Correct.
I'm the problem.
And that is what responsibility is. It's ability to respond. You're going from reaction to response, and you're able to see that and take ownership of that. And as soon as you do that and you reconcile and you transmute and you do the work, right? And the work can show up in different ways in just different moments. Again, it could be through meditation. It could be through, I'll do what I call somatic experiencing, which is actually not even through the breath work, which is just through, I had a young man in here. He was a father, and he had trouble with his own inner warrior, his own inner masculine. And he just thought, if I express this dark side of me, this part that is like almost like the killer, that I could harm somebody. And he was very afraid of that. And so we got him to work through that, and, using different processes, like just going to just punching pillows or whatever. It was like a scene from Fight Club. It was beautiful. It was incredible to watch. And he sent me a text later after having gone through that. And I also worked him through some somatic release breath work. But he texted me that he had wrestled with his son for the first time, and they had the most incredible time. And it was, it's like moments like that, like that's health, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, I didn't work on his knee pain. I didn't work on his back pain. Like we helped him really go down into his psyche and express himself in the most authentic way.
Yeah.
And that for me is what true health is.
Yeah. I love that. I often try to think about, because part of what I want to help other people with is helping them find optimal health. And what optimal health means for them, it might look different than what it means for me.
Yes.
But I'm always forced to look and ask, like, well, what is what's taking those two words apart from each other?
Yeah.
What is optimal?
Yeah.
And what is health?
Yeah.
And and like what I try to think about it is like, well, it's the ability to do anything when you want to do the thing.
Correct.
And it's making decisions that give you more options.
Yes.
than take options off of the table.
Absolutely.
So that might be with your body.
Yeah.
That might also be with your mind.
Yeah.
Your spirit. And so it's I just love wanting to be a part. Like you're drawn to being a part of what helps other people find that.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that there's people like you out there who, like the gentleman you just mentioned, thank goodness he found you. And the joy of wrestling with your child was something that he was holding himself back from.
Right.
And it like makes me like on the inside feel like a little tearful about that, because he had been not able to do that.
Correct.
And then you helped him to do that. It's just beautiful.
He wasn't able to express himself authentically, and because of fear. And it's not that he was, a bad father. He was a great father,
of course not.
But he even knew. And this is where, I hope those who are watching or listening really take a second and just consider, like, where are you not showing up in your world? Like it's almost like you gotta like, shit, like you kind of know. It's like, where are you not playing out 100%? It could be in your relationship with a parent, with oftentimes I find that people, it's in their relationships
Yes.
that they're not playing full out. You know, for some men, they do look at their business or finances, but a lot of times it's in our relationships, because there is such a, like, so much there. And it's interesting because as a provider, you know, of helping people live their fullest potential and live health, as a verb, not just as a noun, right? Yeah, because it's a constant work. You know, seeing the ability for people to go from this reaction, this fear state, and bring them through, it's so powerful. It's just so powerful, man. So I love this work.
Yeah.
I love this work.
And that's and me too. And that's why I love being around people like you, who, again, it's like you're not, the reasons that you engage in this are pure. You know, it's out of literally out of love, and it's so cool for me to see people, and this is what I really hope for all people in my life, that they find ways to provide for themselves and their family.
Yeah.
That also make them feel like a whole person, that fulfill them, that bring them joy in the process. And I really think that's the sweet sauce, you know, that's the magic, that if you can find ways to do that for yourself. And sometimes it's not through work, like through career, you don't you know, you might, I actually am jealous of people who have a job where they can kind of just go there,
I know,
do their thing, and then leave it there, and then go enjoy their lives doing other things like hunting, you know, fitness, or family. You know, I'm not one of those people. Yeah, and sometimes that frustrates me about me. Yeah, that I can't just go somewhere, and just put in an 8-hour day and not feel emotionally connected to it.
Correct. Yeah. You know what's funny about that? I think about that sometimes too, because ultimately, what you and I are doing, right? Even this conversation, this is happening on a Sunday, you know, for people who are interested.
8:30 a.m.
8:30 on a Sunday. And we did get, you know, tacos and coffee, which is perfect. But that's the life. That's the lifestyle that we chose. And, you know, I would rather go into a weight room with heavy weights rather than go into one of those weight rooms with a bunch of Nautilus machines and like pretend like I'm getting fit. Similar to you, I have a high ambition for myself, high standard for myself, that I want to live my greatest life. Not just like a really, really good life where I'm like, you know, like la-di-da, but like I want to live like a motherfucking badass life. And I'm living that right now, and it's getting better and better and better and better. And I'm seeing the fruits of my labor coming through now. And like, do I have a standard for more money? Yeah, of course. Do I have a standard for you know, more, you know, just like better work out in the world? Yeah, of course, you know, but that, I know that's coming. Like, I just know it, because I'm in alignment with truth for myself. I'm expressing myself.
You're fully doing the inner work
doing it,
that's going to produce those kinds of things.
Yes.
You know, and it's, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
What you're saying right now is like, I'm going to engage in this day, in this moment, in a way that I know can produce some sort of product, some sort of outcome that I desire. Yeah. But I'm also going to let go of, I'm not going to get so locked into the outcome that I forget that right now, this moment, what we're sharing, or when you're doing your work with the people you serve, that's how it all happens. Correct. You know? And so many people abandon today for some sort of being, you know, locked in and focused on a future. Yes. That they just miss it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They miss the opportunity.
It's like you miss the opportunity because you're focused on the outcome. And even if you're focused on the outcome of the here and now, of looking at, let's take people's cars, right? Like sometimes like we look inside of our car and be like, gosh, this thing is a mess. You know, like
you literally, did you see my car?
I just was thinking about I was like, man, I need a car wash. You know,
got just piled of stuff in the back of my car.
And I have a bump on the back of my truck because I, you know, backed into a tree and, you know, like all this, and I'm like, God, like, you know, and you can look at these things and really kind of beat yourself up about it and really kind of get irritated with the outcome. But again, it's like, if the weights are rusted, they're still going to work, you know, like be grateful for what you have right now. You cannot possibly move forward in life until you have gratitude for what you have right this very second, even if it's causing you all the pain in the world. It's that thing that you needed to grow yourself, to grow your character, to grow your soul.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up that visual, because as you were saying it, I had the visual of like my car, and it is messy, but it goes back to everything we just talked about. It's like, well, one, it's a task of awareness.
Yes.
I am aware
Yes.
that it is messy.
Yes.
That's important. Number two, I'm also aware of how it got messy, you know, and I think about, I live here. This
Yes.
is how I get around. And then it's a task of acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm aware of how this all happened. I'm aware that it is the way it is, and I can accept it the way it is, or I can accept my power to change it.
Yeah.
Like if my car is messy, and I'm bringing this up as an analogy, but that means if my mind is messy, if my body is messy, if my life around me is messy, this is exactly how I need to be aware of it.
Yes.
I need to accept how I got here.
Yeah.
And then I need to either empower myself to change it or accept it as it is and move on and just drop it.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of, personal development gurus always talk about just make your own bed, right? Like when you wake up in the morning, like the first thing to do is just make your bed. And why that's important is because it sets the tone for the day. And even if we're talking about cars, just what if you just every day, just like, took a quick inventory before you got out and be like, oh, I'm going to grab these receipts and this.
It takes 30 seconds.
Takes 30 seconds. Yeah. This like, the coffee, from the back, or papers or mail, or, all your bags or whatever is just sort of like living in there. And you just take the stuff out and you like, great. That's such an easy thing. I literally lived with checklists for a while, and I got away from it for a minute, but I think I'm going to go back to it because it was really powerful. Because let's take, for instance, like the car thing. You're going to forget, and that's okay. And we're not designed to remember everything as humans, but we're kind of going through our life subconsciously. So I would literally have checklists of, for like a kitchen, right? As an example, it's like horizontal surfaces are clean and tidy. Check. Dishes are in dishwasher. Check. Sink is clear. Check. I can literally read these things and speaking them in yes or no sentences. I can say, yes, this is true, or no, this is not true. And that is such a powerful practice.
Wow.
That was something that I was living by for a while, and my life was actually running really efficiently.
Well, and it's like a really good practical example of like your space, your physical space and stuff. But I actually have a thing that I either read or listen to every day, and I call it my purpose dashboard.
Yeah.
And it's things that I talk about, like, what do I consider my purpose in this world to be, and what my vision for my life is. And then I wrote myself like a little manifesto, and then at the end it has like things that, inspire, things that I aspire to be like, there might be quotes or whatnot.
Yeah.
But I either read it or listen to it every day. And that's my daily kind of check. So I can go down and be like, am I doing this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Am I facilitating that vision that I've set out for myself? Yes or no?
Right.
With the way that I've described how I want my way of being to be through this manifesto that I read, each little sentence in there, I can kind of be like, it reminds me each day, oh, like, dang, I haven't been being that way. I need to, and it helps me to recorrect and get back on course.
If you do one thing, let's just say, like, we'll go back to the car thing because that's the perfect example. If you start doing that over the course of a few weeks, you're going to hit resistance. Even if you have a checklist and you're reading it, and you're like, you're gonna hit this resistance, and that is the work, right? So if like there's something that I provide, right? Like it's both the practical steps of like getting a result, but then also, well, what's happening on the inside? Why are you getting super triggered on week 2 or 3 relative to cleaning out your car? Well, maybe it has something to do with you starting to, it's almost like you're now aware of something deeper that you were hiding from, and that's why your car was super messy. And maybe that is you are unfulfilled with your daily work. You're unfulfilled with your career. Let's just say that as an example. So it would be so easy just to like after work, throw your stuff in your car and kind of use your car to offload this emotion of unfulfillment. that you're not, because you're not living up to something that you know you can be. Maybe you want to be a baker, and make Rice Krispie cookies for, the world, and you're a lawyer. And I know it sounds weird, but that shit happens. Like, that's real. And so you would use your car and you'd throw your stuff in there, and there would be papers and other things. So that's just a physical representation of what's going on the inside. And so as you start to change yourself and put your world in order, your physical world, let's say your car, your house or whatever, you're going to hit resistance. And that's where you got to have a tribe around you to help you through that process. You got to have a coach to help you through that process. You got to have the actual processes, right? You got to have like the work. What am I going to do here? Like, man, like I've been, putting my car together, and I just realized I fucking hate my life, right? And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, let's have a conversation about that. Let's dive into that. And why I bring this up is we oftentimes do things in our world, we don't even realize it, but we're doing it out of fear. We're unwilling to look at, well, I'm so unfulfilled in my career, and I'm afraid of like changing, because what if I don't have enough money to pay for the things that I want?
Or I'm afraid how other people are going to perceive me.
Right.
If I just do a 180 here,
yes,
in my career, or in my relationship, or whatever, I'm afraid, will anyone still love me?
Yeah.
Will anyone accept me for that decision to completely change direction?
Absolutely.
I think I talk to a lot of people that's really what it's about.
Yes.
Like, if I change the way I'm doing things, will other people be accepting of that?
Right. And what you'll find is that it doesn't fucking matter.
It doesn't matter, because you'll find new people.
Exactly.
Not that people are a throwaway or anything, but you'll find your new tribe. If this tribe got you to where you are now, and you have to somehow go on your own for a little while until you draw in a new tribe, then that's what's important. It's why, if that tribe's going this direction, you don't even want to go that direction. Why go with the momentum of that?
Right.
Rather than kind of like,
I promise you, if we're going to say nothing else, right? Like, this is like the one, if you start to express yourself authentically, you will get resistance from the external world. Zero doubt about it. From your friends, from like high school friends, from college friends, from parents, from your significant other, you will get resistance. Yourself. And if you do nothing else, just go through, like, push through that as much as you possibly can. There was a moment in my life where I decided I am no longer living anything but authentic expression. Like, period, end of story. I am now authentically expressing every single moment of the day. And I started showing up, and I remember when it was actually after that plant medicine experience with ayahuasca, that was a very, very clear lesson that I needed in my life, which was authentic expression. And it was so powerful. And I remember coming back and being like, yes, I'm going to be this thing. And I was just so enthused by movement and just like flowing. And so I started taking videos of myself in my front yard with my shirt off.
Yeah.
And moving, and almost like kind of like a Tai Chi like kind of movement. And I remember thinking, like, this is the moment. I need to post this.
Yes.
And I did. And so, like, there were definitely people that were like, yes. And I remember, I think my mom even sent me a text like, are you okay? Like, and my wife even at one point was like, I don't even know who you are. Like, this is totally different. And I remember thinking, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I am authentically expressing. I am moving my body. I am a representation of authentic expression. And I moved through that. And those people, either they left my life or they just became okay with who I was now.
Yeah.
Because they started seeing, oh, he's tuned in. He's tapped in. And my mom will say things every once in a while, which I kind of crack up about. At the last Breathwork, she was in town, and she saw pictures, and she's like, are you a cult leader? I'm like, no. Like, I was laughing because I'm standing there with my hand on my heart, and there are all these people on the mats. I'm like, no, I'm not feeding them Kool-Aid. But it, I could see from the outside world, it could look like.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, again, people, as you and I know, and everyone knows, is like the way that people interact with you is more about what's going on with them,
correct,
than it is anything what's
correct.
going on with you. They see that,
yes,
and it creates some sort of feeling about themselves in them. Yeah. Your mom might be thinking, did I raise my son? Was I a good mom?
Yes.
Did I raise him I don't know. Her that reaction in her was much more likely probably about her than it is anything about you dancing with your shirt off, which I saw those videos, and I remember having the feeling of, man, I'm so fucking proud of you. You know what I mean? Like, you are doing something very different than what you were doing before, and you are just owning it. And I just thought, honestly, so in me experiencing my own shit through you, I was like, man, I was like, I wish I would do that more. Not necessarily dancing and with, but my version of that.
Whatever that version is, and that's why I knew it was so important for me to post that video. I remember like filming it thinking, all right, well, we're about to see how this goes. And I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to post this, and I'm going to move my body and just like in the most vulnerable way, take my shirt off too. And and just like, okay, I'm gonna show this, and of course, like, again, people, like, it's going to cause a reaction for people. But what's so powerful too is when you actually do the work, when you go through the process of reconciling and being aware of your own inner shadows, demons, ego, and you transmute that, you can actually now hold space. I'll give an example. My mom, let's say she was experiencing her own, inner thing of like, did I raise my son, correctly? Well, it's almost as if I can imbibe that. I can bring that into me, her own fears. I can transmute it in me, and I can send it back out of love, rather than reacting as, well, what if my mom leaves me? Because that's like a mother wound thing. That's a real thing. What if my mom doesn't accept me? Instead of like coming from that space, I come from a space of such powerful, authentic alignment to myself, to truth, that I'm now able to hold space for her fears, anxieties, and traumas, and it's healing. And that's how we take generational traumas. I'm talking like 3, 4, 5 layers of great grandparents, and we transmute that through ourselves. And it no longer, like, those reactions no longer live in a family unit. And now we don't have to react the way we used to react in treating our children or treating our parents or whatever that might be. We can literally create a brand new earth.
Yeah. We could probably talk I know we could talk all day about this stuff, but one thing that we probably won't get to talk a lot about, but one thing I've been thinking a lot about is that, ancestry and how things are passed down to us through not only through behaviors and philosophies and ways of being, but even just through epigenetics.
Correct.
The physical markers,
DNA.
DNA, and it's just like when I start to think about that, I'm like, because that also, again, going back to the awareness piece, when you can understand that and you start to explore, well, this is all those things, how it led to like this moment, how I am right now.
Yes.
It gives you a level of awareness that you wouldn't have explained in any other way.
Yeah.
So, we're getting around to a little bit over an hour on the show, which is awesome. Like I said, I could talk to you all day long about this stuff. I'm just so freaking grateful that you are a person in my life, and that you teach me, and that I learn from you, and that I get to witness all the work that you're doing. And thank you now for sharing that with the folks listening, to who's ever listening or watching.
It's my honor, man.
Yeah, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, and if people are looking for resources or kind of next steps too, they're definitely welcome to reach out on Instagram. They can
how do
find
they find
me.
you?
Dr. Dave Cohodes, Cohodes, is my last name. They can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active there. And the unbreakableself.com, again, unbreakableself.com is going to come out, and we'll have a bunch of resources. We'll have experiences, retreats. I'm going to start with that collective, because we need each other. And that's where it's going to start. It'll be an online community that helps leaders, people who have ambition, people who have that go-getter mindset, that they know that they have potential that they may or may not be living up to. And even if they're successful, and I love working with guys like this where they are financially successful or successful in their career, but they know that there's something missing. And it's those guys I love working with, because they have a skill set that the world can use, that can really bring something incredible into this world. And it's my hope that we can help those guys take their skills and align with impact, with depth. But they got to do the work. They got to go through the inner work, and that takes time, and that takes coaching, and that takes work. It just does.
Yeah, and just give those gifts and those skills to the world in more powerful ways. Like when they figured that part out, you know?
Yeah, and that's true health. And I think if we can all show up as our healthiest self, I think we can all do it together. And
Absolutely.
That's it, man.
I love that. Well, I'm so in. I'm here for all that.
Awesome.
And we will share through the podcast. People have links to all your sites and everything. So if you guys are looking, if you liked what you heard today, and Dr. Dave seems like the guy that you might need to engage with, definitely hit him up.
Yes.
I love you, man.
Love you, brother.
I hope that we will see each other again soon.
Oh, we will.
All right. Take care.